Okay, go. Let's start. So this is the second part of the Maimonidean Controversies, and this is going to be about all kind of stuff. Last class was a lot about the resurrection and also about rabbinical authority and re, re, remuneration for rabbis. But now it's about allegory, about astrology, about magic, miracles, philosophy, reason, religious and secular studies, and science. Lots of stuff. So, um, it's cool. So, yeah, let's start. Let's start here. So, no, here we are. Here we are. The second controversy lasted about 5 years. Imani, are you there?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, Imani, give it away.
The opposition against how do you say his name?
Maimonides.
Maimonides in the first wave of the controversy had come mostly from the Arabic world. The second wave came predominantly from Jews who lived in Christian lands, initially from Provence and Catalonia.
Yeah, that's very close. Provence is the south of France, and Catalonia is now part of Spain. But in those days, it was an independent country, and Catalonia been mostly under. It was part of Spain. Is part of the Iberian Peninsula, but almost entirely been in history. It's a very short period under Islam, mostly during the Middle Ages under Christianity. So there's typically a Christian culture there. Yeah.
Gradually, more and more Jews moved from Muslim lands into Christian territory, initially mostly to Provence and Catalonia. They brought with them their traditions of scholarship, knowledge of grammar, and their philosophy, as well as their interest in secular studies. In their new environments, they found already existing Jewish communities with established centers of learning. These Jewish immigrants were impressed with what they found. There was a truly high level of Jewish scholarship.
Yeah, wow, we didn't really know much about these communities. We thought everything important in terms of Judaism was in Arabic lands, but look, there's entire communities here, and they study and they on a high level. However,
At the same time, they also noted a few things that they thought needed fixing. For example, the scholars there studied and interpreted midrashic
yeah.
allegorical stories in a literal way. Also, they had not much awareness of grammar or philosophy and were not involved in secular studies.
So yeah, okay, they're really good students, but and they know a lot of Talmud, but this they don't know. So yeah, we'll fix it. That's we can share our knowledge with them, and that'll be fine.
Those Jews who had come from Arabia land started to share these areas of knowledge that they had grown up with and that were so cherished in their lands of origin. They began to translate works of philosophy, science, medicine, astronomy, etc., from Arabic into Hebrew.
Yeah, there was a huge wave of translations. That's when the Guide of the Perplexed was translated. There were Sa'ad Gaon was translated to Hebrew so that the non-Arabic Jews could read it also.
When Maimonides' philosophical work, The Guide of the Perplexed, became available in Hebrew through Samuel ibn Tibbon's translation, a new wave of controversy was unleashed. In many ways, the Jews in Christian lands lived in a very different world from the Jews who came from Muslim lands, even in the way they experienced Judaism.
Yeah, so their whole worldview, their religious views were so different from what was now presented to them that was that caused a clash. To give a few examples.
To give just a few examples, philosophy was foreign to them. Many had no problem with anthropomorphisms.
Mm-hmm.
They would visit graves of holy men and ask them to be intermediaries.
Yeah, Maimonides said that is absolutely pagan, forbidden. Mm-hmm.
The existence of demons and magic was very real to them.
Yeah, I mean, there were some people in the Arabic world who believed that, but Maimonides said, no, those are just forces that we don't understand. When an illness, people didn't know about diseases and about viruses and about bacteria, so they thought everybody's also getting sick, and we're doing the same thing as usual. There must be some power, so they thought they were maybe demons or witches that put spells on them and stuff. Maimonides says, no, These are things in the cosmos that cause this. Basically, these forces are people who don't understand it. They call them demons. It seems that he is alluding to, without knowing it, to bacteria and to viruses. But he didn't know about the existence. But he was really on target in that respect. Yeah.
In their observance, locally developed customs were often more decisive than rules derived from legal sources such as the Talmud.
Yes. To give you two examples, for instance, here you see these straps on people's arms are called tefillin, and you see that there's an example how a local custom has become law and actually override the Talmudic law. So, for instance, the fact to pray, to put on tefillin and to pray without this, you see that white robe that the person has on the left picture. That's called a talit. That's a prayer shawl, so to say. To pray without the prayer shawl before you're married, that's many Ashkenazim do that. That's derived from a local custom because the custom came about because people were very poor and couldn't afford it, and then they gave it as a wedding gift, and then became the custom to it was customary because of poverty that unmarried men did not wear it, but now it became like a custom. And even though people can afford such a talit, they don't do it. So this is one of the examples how a local custom actually has overruled an aspect of Jewish law. Okay, yeah.
As more and more philosophical works had become available in Latin, Christianity in Europe was involved in an ideological battle as well, between those who wanted to combine revelation with reason on the one hand, and on the other side, the party of anti-rationalists who stood for the unaltered traditions of the church. This latter group was quite wary of heretics and willing to wipe out all controversial thinking.
Yeah, if you open up, it looks very, very beautiful to open up for us, in this group, to open up to reason. I mean, why would you be unreasonable if you're a religious person and you cannot, and you have to then uh, uh, take out part of your brain cells, in order to function as a religious person? That's not a good way of living and functioning. It's just, if it's not combinable with reason, then what are you actually doing? That's not religion, that's delusion, right? So it seems like the only right way to if you're religious, to also open up to reason. On the other hand, when you open up to reason, people can reason all kinds of things, and they can reason themselves in their convictions can change, so it doesn't fit in the religion anymore. That's of course a risk that you take if you open the door to reason. So in the church there was a movement like that, but didn't last long because people started thinking independently, which is dangerous. People, many people don't want their students to think independently because they draw conclusions that the teachers and the guidance and the priests don't like. So, but for you, I would just be very proud if you come to different conclusions as what I teach you, because I would like you to know independently, and as long as you have good grounds for it and really good, objective basis and reasonings that lead you to that. So the church then moved away from that and saying, we can't have that because it's going to be all these heresies. They're going to break with the church. You can't have that. So the same thing happened in Christianity as it happened in Islam. Now, what happened here?
The situation was somewhat parallel in the Jewish community, where both pro and anti-philosophy movements became more pronounced. Certain rationalists went very far in applying allegory to the biblical text. For instance, some even taught that Abraham and Sarah were not historical figures, but metaphors of certain virtues.
Yeah. Now, in a way, if this makes, if this is gives you, adds a meaning to you that you are that functions for you, that if you read in the stories of Abraham and Sarah certain patterns of virtues that appeal to you, then that should not be a problem. The only problem is if you do that with the exclusion of other interpretations. There's actually already a notion in Judaism that every text can be interpreted in 70 different ways. 70 stands for unlimited, So you can read a text and come to this conclusion or to this conclusion or to, and every conclusion can have a value and add something to the treasury of teachings, right? So if Abraham and Sarah stand for certain virtues that you can incorporate, that you become a little Abraham or a little Sarah in certain ways, fine. The only thing is, if two parties, people who like to read the stories allegorically and others like to read it literally, if they don't tolerate each other's interpretation, that would be the problem, in my opinion. Actually, I'm not even sure I wrote this. I should probably check or change this text because I wrote here, some even thought that Abraham and Sarah were not historical figures, but metaphors of certain virtues. Maybe we're not historical figures. I'm not sure if they denied that they could also be historical figures. The issue is that they interpreted as metaphors, and that didn't jive well with other people who took it literally. But did these metaphorical interpreters deny a literal reading? That I don't know. So I might have put that in the text. That's hard to figure out. Also, I'm not sure, but I will try to look that up. All right, we'll continue.
Some denied all miracles. How could God go against the laws of nature which he had put in place himself to rule his creation? If the world needed intervention, it would mean that his creation was imperfect.
Yeah. So this is the idea. If God can save the Jewish people and put them on the other side of the sea with natural means, why would he do it in a spectacular way? Maybe to make a point or something. But this is the reasoning of the rationalists, of some rationalists. Right. So as a result, two camps came to the surface: pro and anti Maimonides, which is basically similar to pro and anti philosophy, which is also parallel to pro and anti secular studies. Can you study secular studies or not? Pro and anti rationalism. All these things are somewhat parallel to each other. And not just then. I mean, that still goes on to some extent. Now, maybe read this also.
The main leader of the anti-philosophy movement was Rabbi Moses ben Naaman. Maimonides, also known as the Ramban. Maimonides believed that Maimonides' position, namely that God had created laws of nature which abide by logic and reason and can be studied and understood by man through his faculty reason, was in fact heresy.
Yeah, another thing that I should adjust: the main leader of the anti-philosophy movement. Yes, that is true. He's definitely a leader of the anti-philosophy movement, but he is not 100% a leader of an anti-Maimonides movement. He's considered to be somebody in the middle, but still radically anti-philosophy, anti-science, though. He had interesting points, so for instance here, what does he say?
It is through the great and famous miracles that man recognizes the hidden foundation of the entire Torah. For no one has a share in the Torah until he believes that all matter and all that occurs is a miracle, not the product of nature, nor the way of the world.
So the way of the world is basically another way of an expression for laws of nature. So he says everything that occurs is a miracle. There is no law of nature that produces these things. Continue the page and then I'll talk about it just a little more.
Both for the community at large and for the individual, if we fulfill the commandments, our reward will be success. If we transgress, then punishment will strike us, not by any law of nature, but all by divine decree.
Yeah, so this is a very radically anti-reason opinion. So what does he say? There are no laws of nature. So if I drop this pen, if I let go of this pen, the same example as last time, If it falls down, you think that's the law of nature. If it goes up and or floats in the air, you think it's a miracle. He says, no, that it falls down is a miracle too. Why would it fall down? There is no law of nature. There is no gravity. Everything is a miracle. So everything that is just the active doing of God. And so you cannot say if that there is forces of nature that cause. Oh, no, I can't say global warming. That's too modern. But in any case, if you would cut all the trees on the whole world, there you would say maybe there's too many rain, not a lot of rain and hurricanes, and it will destroy your crops because of global warming. Well, of course, once again, there was no issue. They didn't have the awareness of global warming then, but I'm just using it as an example. So Nachmanides would not say, yeah, that's the law of nature. We cut all the trees. That's why. He would say, no, rain is not because of the trees, and hurricanes not because of the trees. It's because of what God wants to happen. So I'm not saying that you can cut all the trees, but if there's a hurricane and destroys your crop, it's because we didn't listen to God. We did the wrong thing. We didn't obey Him. If we obey Him, we'll have good crops and the right rain and stuff. So nothing is dependent on laws of nature. It's all because of God's will, and it's all miracles. So that's extremely look. We'll forgive Him because there was no much serious science going on. Now we have proof of certain scientific phenomena, right? In those days, they didn't. So the people who were philosophers who said there are laws of nature, there was more an inkling. They just saw that things were consistent, and they concluded that there had to be an order in the universe. But there was no proof. It was just an inkling that they had. So he says, no, I'm an old-fashioned believer. This is not what the Bible tells us. The Bible can be taken literally, that everything is the will of God. Well, it's not even what the Bible says literally, but that's his interpretation. That's a very traditional interpretation. On the other hand, he didn't go so far to condemn Maimonides totally, but he disagrees with a lot of things on Maimonides. Isn't that interesting? Okay. So we go to another person, Sjimon de Piera. I'll give you just 2 more slides. How is that, Imani?
That's fine. Meshulam de Pierre, a friend of Maimonides, wrote at least 7 poems against Maimonides and 2 specifically against the guide of the perplexed. O guide of the perplexed, be silent and shut your mouth. These are things we have never heard before. Those who say that scripture is allegory and his prophet a man of dreams shall bear their sin.
Yeah, well, that was just a little piece of a poem that I found a few weeks ago. So, okay, good.
Tensions rose not only in Provence and Catalonia, where Maimonides was from, but even in northern France. One party excommunicated with others and vice versa. Rabbi Mir Abulafia from Toledo traveled around approaching rabbis in France and asked them to ban the guide of the perplexed.
Yeah, so you know what excommunicated means?
Stop communicating?
Oh yeah, a bit, but it means that you're banning somebody from the community. So you say, you're not Jewish anymore. You're a heretic, an apostate. We don't count you in the community anymore. You're not allowed in any other synagogues, and nobody's allowed to talk to you or to own your books, etc., etc. So that is basically, banning. It's a religious ban on people. Oh, thank you so much. I will go to someone else. Thank you, Imoni.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and Sylvia is here. So I'm going to Sylvia. Sylvia, yes, this is yours.
This was met with enthusiasm by a Tosafist, Rabbi Sjimon ben Abraham, who already opposed Maimonides concerning the resurrection and who also was against the Mishnah and Torah. He believed that codification of Jewish law took the rulings out of their Talmudic context. Siding with him was Rabbi Salman of Montpellier.
Yeah.
and his 2 students, Rabbi Yonah ben Abraham of Gerona and Rabbi David ben Saul. They signed the excommunication bill, a ban against anyone who studied Maimonides' books or even owned them.
Yeah, if you had a book of Maimonides, you'd be kicked out of the community. All right, so there's a few documents we're going to look at. First is by an anonymous writer. We don't know. And this is all, by the way, this is the whole letter, all in rhyme. It's really interesting. And a lot of expressions from the Bible. So it's really high Hebrew literature, basically.
Document one, anonymous writer. Those there arose in, how do you say it?
Montpellier.
Montpellier, certain persons, son of Belial, B'nai Belial, worthless people, a rabbi and his two disciples. They growled like bears and caused the multitude to sin, acting
Hypocritically. Hypocritically, sorry. Yeah.
And spreading confusion about the Lord and his
anointed. That is Al Adonai Al Mashiach. That's from a song. So the Lord and his Messiah, but the anointed is Moses ben
Maimon. May his saintly memory be a blessing until the wise men of the communities of province became zealous for their God and excommunicated and banned these three sinners.
So this is a person. There were people who went around talking bad about Maimonides, and he's comparing them to bears, and they cause people to sin, meaning they turn against Maimonides, and he even calls Maimonides the anointed of God, basically the Messiah of God, which is not literally. I'm sure he didn't believe that he was the Messiah, but this is also a metaphor in a way. But he's condemning them. He says those are three sinners. So Rabbi Yonah, what's their name? Sorry, Rabbi Solomon of Montpellier, Yonah ben Abraham, and David ben Shaul. Yeah.
When the enemies of Maimonides saw that, they sent one of them, Rabbi Yonah ben Abraham, with their writings to France, the sages there, and incited them. They seduced them into sending letters of excommunication to the communities of Provence.
Yeah. So the people in France, which is the north of France, now in their instigation wrote letters against Maimonides and against anyone who follows him or studies him.
When the sages in Provence saw that the great fire had been kindled, they chose one of themselves, one of their wise and noble men, namely the sage and the elder Rabbi David Kimhi. Immediately and without hesitation, every province and every city in Catalonia and the kingdom of Aragon set out snares and nets to entrap the feet of the rebels.
So there are people in Provence and people in Catalonia and Aragon who actually sided Maimonides, and they start a counter movement.
The rabbis of the French people also turned back from their evil path and repented of what they had done and felt ashamed of what they had written, and they sent letters of apology to the sages of Provence.
So they said, oh, we didn't know. We thought Maimonides was a bad person, but now there's opposition. You know what? We are not taking that stance anymore. Please forgive us.
The source of impurity, the arouser of quarrels, Solomon ben Abraham of Montpellier began to incline towards heresy. He incited the people and led them astray. Two of his students, one of them named Yonah, disqualified under rabbinic law and a bastard according to the Torah law, and the other named David ben Saul, joined in his shame and the outrageous shame of his mother. David ben Saul wore a signet ring with his royal names, but their numerical value is the same as the words bastard son of a menstruous woman.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to call somebody a jerk or something, but biblically you say son of a menstruous woman. Okay, ridiculous. In any case, yeah, so there was a lot of animosity and controversy, that's for sure. Continue.
When Rabbi David ibn Kimhi came from Narbonne to the kingdom of Castile, he sent a letter to the discerning sage, the scribe and physician, Rabbi Judah ibn al-Fakhar.
Fakhar, right. So he wrote, okay, now here is David Kimhi, who is from the Provence, who is pro-Maimonides. He writes to Yehuda el-Fachar. Now, this is also, if you look in the Hebrew, if you can see, and even if you don't see, the end of the sentence is on the left, you can see that every two lines rhyme, even if you can't read it, but you can see the letters are the same. So this is a long letter, all in rhyme and all full of expressions from the Bible. So maybe just read the English side, Sylvia.
Behold, I have come forth as an
Adversary.
adversary to the sons of Peleg and Yoktan, who cause division over his wisdom and belittle his faith, who have never known any wisdom and do not see understanding, who strengthens the religion of God like he does, while joining it with wisdom.
Yeah, so it's full of allusions. Now, I've come to you as an adversary. That's from a text in Numbers 22:32, which is actually an angel saying to Bilam. An adversary is the word Satan, Satan. But Satan doesn't mean the devil in Hebrew. It really means an opponent. But this is an angel was not a devil, but it was an angel who was actually stopping somebody to do from his mission. In any case, and come to you as an adversary is really a quote. To the sons of Peleg and Yoktan. Now, Peleg and Yoktan are from family trees that are in the Bible, but Peleg means from Liflog, Palag means division or disagreement, and Yoktan from Katan, which means small. So they are the people who bring division, and they are belittling or looking down on people, making people small. They call division, see, over his wisdom and belittle his faith. So these two lines are basically the explanation of the names right before, cause division and belittle, who never had known any wisdom, so they don't really know much. They're stupid people. They don't see understanding. Who strengthens the religion of God like he does. He, that is Maimonides. So they're attacking Maimonides, who makes the religion of God strong, meaning by combining, joining it with wisdom. So religion joined with wisdom, that is revelation joined with reason. He actually makes the religion of God into a logical, understandable system that is not based on hocus pocus anymore, but really on reasoning. Yeah, that's what he says. So, behold, I've come forth as an adversary. Okay, here's an illustration of this angel with Bilam. Okay, now, continue the letter, please.
You, the leaders of the children of Israel, have not awakened to the voice that you heard. You have stood silently in the face of the insults directed at Maimonides and at us who adhere to his books. I, an old man whose strength has failed, arose like a warrior who stirs up zeal. Isaiah 42:13. And the communities of province Catalonia and Aragon banned and excommunicated Rabbi Solomon, Yonah, and David. Thereupon I turned my face towards you.
Yeah, so this is, he's writing, Ibn Kimchi in his older age already, to Yehuda el-Fachar, and there was a doctor in Spain, and he wants this doctor, this rabbi doctor, to be on his side. Now, Yehuda el-Fachar writes back to Ibn Kimchi, also a long letter, all in rhyme, and even a more amazing rhyme, and totally, you see all the texts in the middle? Every sentence is basically a text from the Bible that he uses in a different context. But maybe you want to read the English here. So yeah.
The Lord rebuke thee, O Satan. It's
David. So he had said, I come to you as an opponent, as a Satan. Now he uses another text, the Lord rebuke you, Satan. That's from Zechariah, which is really, really brilliant almost.
It's David who is the petty one.
Yeah, hold on. So it starts with Satan and Katan, which is Yoktan. He's using the same two first lines as the same imagery and the same rhyme as David Kimchi's letter. He said the Yoktan was the small one who looks down, who makes Maimonides look small. David is the petty one. This is David Kimchi's, meaning you are the one who was belittling and who is limited of understanding. Yes?
From where do you come? From roaming the earth, through its length and its breadth, kindling conflict and controversy before the Lord, stirring up zeal for the guide of the perplexed, who walks in darkness. Do you not know, have you not heard, that some of the words of the guide and the confused are themselves confused in the land? The wilderness has shut them in, and their beloved has withdrawn himself and is gone, saying that the sun is standing still in Gibeon, and the mouth of Bilam's donkey and the crooked certain Leviathan were only seen in prophetic vision and by way of allegory.
Yeah. So he's saying, you are going around defending, roaming the earth, which is also a text referring to the devil, to Satan, sorry, in the book Job. You're kindling conflict. You're actually trying to stir people up in defense of Maimonides, but these people walk in darkness. So all these things that all these expressions and stories in the Bible, according to them, is just allegory and vision and dreams and not really happened. And I now translated it more as prose, but it's still poetry, but it's a lot of work to write it down in poetic form. So I'll just continue about the message.
Anyone who fears the word of God and his faith will be overwhelmed at this sight, and the spirit of zeal will come upon him, since Maimonides recklessly disagreed with the entire Mishnah, wherein it is written, 10 things were created at twilight, just before creation was finalized, one of them being the talking feature of Bilam's donkey. Certainly we cannot allow allegory break in like a burglar.
It is interesting that this is in the Mishnah, that these supernatural things like a talking donkey were already created in the beginning of creation, which means that this is an old Talmudic way to save the dichotomy between laws of nature and miracle. So if you say that God it doesn't make sense for God to override his laws of nature, then the Mishnah has said that the splitting of the sea of the Red Sea and the talking donkey and a few more things were all created at the beginning of the creation. That means they are part of the laws of nature. So the laws of nature is donkeys don't talk, but there's one law of nature that there's one donkey in one time of history that does talk. So you're actually included in the laws of nature. That was actually the background, I think, philosophically of this text. But in any case, good. So that was a good reading, Sylvia. Thank you so much. You did. I think you did enough. Unless you are unstoppable, then I'll go to someone else. Is Nayeli is here, I believe. No.
Yes.
Good. Because it's been forever since you read, right, Nayeli?
Yes.
Oh, now this is your chance.
Maimonides also said regarding the eternal pre-existence of the world that if Aristotle could clearly demonstrate this according to all the laws and principles of logic, one could take the scriptural story of creation in a non-literal way and interpret it in accordance with the theory of the world's eternal pre-existence, just as he did with the words imagine and likeness, since their literal meaning would imply God's corporality. Likewise, with every scriptural passage, he teaches that if science contradicts it, we do not take it the literal way. Thus, he made the straight path into a maze. Lamb 3:9.
Oh, just you can skip that. That's Lamentations 3, verse 9. That no one can pass. Right. So meaning is a straight path. A straight path is the Bible is true in a literal way. Well, that is straight. You don't have to think anymore about what does it mean. It's like that's fundamentalist way of reading the Bible. From cover to cover, everything is literally true. So there's still people who think this has to be true. We keep that, even though in the time of science. But I can if there's no science and no proof that Why not just hold on to the Bible? But Maimonides was his time way ahead. And so this Rabbi Fachar says, everything that is contradicted by philosophy or meaning by reason should be reinterpreted. Many people, believing people, religious people, have done that also with the story of creation. They read the story of creation as a allegorical, as an allegorical story with a lot of underlying messages that could help people and guide people, and inspire people, but not as a record of a historical record of what happened scientifically. The same thing happened with, if you combine the story of creation with evolution. So there's still also people who don't want to do that, of course. So that's a similar thing. So yes, I understand it's confusing, right? So he says it becomes a maze. People become confused, and so this is one of the reasons why this is arguments against Maimonides. Okay.
Pre-existence of the world invalidates the Shabbat with its blemish by changing the meaning. For every Israelite knows that the reason for keeping the Shabbat is based in literal understanding of the biblical story of the creation of the world. For in 6 days the Lord created heaven and earth, and therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and sanctified it.
Yeah, this is like
If
the English word of Shabbat, Sabbath day, bless the Sabbath day. But it's confusing. I should have said Shabbat everywhere, maybe.
if this Shabbat, the seventh day of the creation, never existed in the world, then he who keeps it has kept it in vain.
Yeah, meaning we keep Shabbat to commemorate that God created in 6 days heaven and earth, and the seventh day he rested. So, and if that wasn't true, why would we keep Shabbat? Well, that could be other people, and Maimonides would definitely come up with a reason there too. And I personally don't believe the story of creation in 6 or 7 days literally, and I keep Shabbat, and it's meaningful for me. I don't think I do it in vain, but I understand this point, and yeah, there are that is an understandable objection, of course. Yes. Okay. So the question now is why Maimonides is trying to minimize miracles, right? He does say in his epistle of the resurrection, God can do miracles, but if he wants, but he minimizes them because God has also already created the laws of nature. Okay, what do you gain?
What do you gain by admitting some miracles and denying others? If one person would come and testify that he had seen a camel flying through the air, and a second came and testified that he saw three camels flying through the air, then certainly if it is possible for the first to be true, it is also possible for the second to be true.
Yeah, so what do you gain if you minimize miracles? So it's saying there are very few miracles, but if there are few miracles, that means there are miracles. And so you're not making everything realistic, reasonable, according to reason, according to laws of nature. If there's a miracle, there can be, if Maimonides agrees that there could be even one miracle, then he should also be able to agree that it could be many miracles. So what does he gain? That's one of his arguments.
If you do not believe, then do not teach.
He's almost implying that Maimonides doesn't really believe. It's interesting.
Why do you discourage the hearts of the children of Israel? You will know that the people who walk in darkness, those who follow the guide of the perplexed, who are wise in their own eyes, who have rejected the word of the Lord, are defectors.
They're basically apostates. They actually, in his idea, they actually left Judaism. So they're in darkness, and this is unbelief, disbelief, and this is ruining Judaism. It's a very staunch, very radical point of view. It continues.
They are stuck between two opinions, and they think they are going this way or that way.
What are the two opinions you think? It's okay. The two opinions are basically two positions. Sorry, maybe. It's confusing. But one is the Torah, Judaism. The other is reason and philosophy. So they're stuck between two. They try to combine two things that are not combinable. So they're, yeah.
But in truth, they are going down to hell, never to rise. Neither does the light of the Torah shine upon them, nor do they have the wisdom of the Greeks. Scripture says, "Neither have you kept my judgments, nor have you followed the laws of those nations." Do these passages not refer to the guide of the perplexed?
So they don't have the Torah because they're not good Jews. And also they don't have the wisdom of the Greeks. They're not really good philosophers because a true philosopher would not try to follow Torah. So they're neither this nor that. Now I have this. This is an image of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. May the righteous be remembered for good. He just passed away very recently, a few weeks ago. Quite young, 72, I believe. It's not so old nowadays. And I think cancer. And he was an inspiring person for many people. I know even Christians who read his books and said they considered him the spiritual leader of monotheism in our day and age. That's actually a Christian pastor told me that. He actually translated some of his books into Dutch. He's in Holland. Now, he was the chief rabbi of England, but he had said below, if a biblical narrative is incompatible with established scientific fact, it is not to be read literally. And so this person posted this on Facebook, and he wrote, "The chief rabbi of England is a total infidel," meaning he's an unbeliever. What else can we say? Satan has agents with beards and a yarmulke too. So there are still people. This is exactly the same controversy. Jonathan Sachs is totally taking the position of Maimonides, and the person who posts this, whose name is Jewish House Mafia, the name tells it already, is an anti-Maimonidean in a way. It's exactly the same controversy. Yes.
The Torah covers her face with the shame, for with smooth words he has raised a multitude to stand upon the rock of controversies. He publicly says that the great miracles and wonders are really nothing but puzzles and parables, and there is no one to make him ashamed.
Yeah, so all the miracles, the wonders, and I have the few dinosaurs here because that's what maybe we can relate to, right? Is the story of whatever creation or evolution. There he says that. So if the story of evolution is true, then the story of creation is a puzzle and a parable in his eyes, at least. And because this is a conservative opinion, I censored the boobs of Eve. Okay, here we go.
In 1232, a group of anti-Maimonideans asked the church to intervene. The church, which was taking a stand against philosophers and rationalists in its own circles, responded positively. Dominican?
Dominican friars, which a friar is an order in the church. It's not because they like to fry books, but it could be. But a Dominican is a follower of Dominicus Dominic. It's one of these Dominicus. I don't know his last name anymore. Sorry, but he was the founder of this order of monks, and Dominicans were often missionaries and people on the forefront of of arguments against heretics and against Jews and Muslims, trying to convince them, convert them, etc., etc. So they burned copies of the Guide and of parts of the Mishneh Torah. So here, actually, a group of anti-Maimonideans, of people who were anti-Maimonides, asked the church to burn books. Now the church did that eagerly, but it didn't stop there. But so what? Like Jews are asking the church to burn Jewish books? That was a shock. Can you read this?
The after effect in the Jewish communities was shock and outrage. both among the Maimonideans and among most anti-Maimonides. How could this have happened?
Yes. We'll go do one more slide.
Abraham Maimonides wrote in a poem, "How foolish are those who think they have burned books of delight, more precious than gold. They are a consuming fire, so how could fire consume them? Consider this, O fools, burns and Ra- Rab,
Rahab's helpers.
Rahab's helpers.
Rahab is a mythical monster who lives in the deep. Yeah.
They were not burned, but went up to God like Tishbe, like an angel amidst the flame."
Yeah, like an angel amidst the flame. I had to correct this here. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to hear you after so long.
Thank you.
Samantha, can I ask you to read the next slide?
Yeah.
Hold on.
Sure.
Good.
The indignation mainly directed itself against Rabbi Yonah of Gerona, or Gerona.
No, actually, it's good. In Spanish, it's Gerona, and but the local language is Catalonian, and that's Girona. So your first one was perfect.
Okay, Gerona. So he had been very outspoken against Maimonides. He had not only signed the excommunication edict, but it was believed that he had been the main instigator of the authorities to publicly burn Maimonides'
So
books.
he's such an enemy of Maimonides that he actually was one of the people who approached the church. Can you please burn these books for us?
This was the time when Maimonides' son, Abraham, now leader of the community in Egypt, wrote Wars of the Lord in defense of his father.
Yes. What does he write?
The news was spread in our country that the works of my father, the Guide of the Perplexed and the Book of Knowledge, were burned by one faction of the people in Montpellier. Through the power of the Christian authorities who assisted them because these books dispute their faith and reveal the falsehood of their viewpoint. They were undoubtedly assisted by the Christians because their belief is not so distant from theirs.
We read the sentence already. This is like a very strong boost, that meaning that these people there who are upset because Maimonides says that a lot of things are not literal and that God's body is not literal, etc., that these people who believe the literal interpretation are like Christians themselves, and that's why they cooperated. So that's kind of a sharp remark, right?
But the burning of Maimonides' works was not the only cause of shock. In 1240, the Jew-hating French king Saint Louis the Ninth,
yeah,
presided over a disputation in Paris between 4 rabbis and Nicholas Donin, a Jewish convert to Christianity. The question to be debated was if the Talmud contained heretical attacks against the Virgin Mary and against Jesus. After the disputation, the presiding commission ruled the Talmud to be destroyed. In the following years, 24 carriage loads of Talmudic manuscripts were confiscated, and in 1244 they were publicly burned in the streets of Paris, between 10,000 and 12,000 volumes.
As you see, it's manuscripts, so they're all written by hand, and so very, very, very costly. And it's also for scholarship, it's sad because there are probably different, or in those days, still different versions of the Talmudic text. And if we had these copies, we could compare them, and we could know more about the origin and the evolution of the Talmud, perhaps. Right. Also
in the 1240s, extreme anti-Maimonideans, on their visit to the Holy Land, desecrated Maimonides' tomb in Tiberias.
Yeah, so that is like what anti-Semites do with Jewish graves, not what Jews do. So that also caused a shock. By the way, who knows? It's probably not even Maimonides' tomb, but someone else is buried there. It's still okay.
Now Rabbi Yonah of Gerona recanted. He declared during a sermon in the synagogue of Montpellier, "I have sinned. Maimonides spoke the truth and his opponents were wrong. I will travel to Israel, to Tiberias, and prostrate myself on his grave and ask him for forgiveness."
Yeah, so what is ironic about this?
I guess
It's just like, I guess it's interesting that they were very against him and his rulings, and now they're using him. They're asking for forgiveness, and I guess it feels sorry, but like it's interesting that they're showing their remorse in this way that he wouldn't have approved of by using him as an
Exactly.
intermediary.
You see it exactly. Yeah. So exactly. So now they say I was wrong. Maimonides was right. I mean, he was probably so angry, and then they said, "Oh, I have to let go of my anger," and you get the weak spot. Oh, Maimonides was pure, and I was wrong, and I have to repent. And what does he do? He repents in a way to do something, or at least to pledge to do something that Maimonides was totally against. That totally said this is forbidden. You cannot go to somebody's grave and talk to somebody and or ask for forgiveness. It's like similar thing, right?
Yeah.
So approving Maimonides by going against him.
Yeah.
Right. And that is a pattern, I think. Mm-hmm.
However, this was never fulfilled. Rabbi Yonah moved to Toledo and became a celebrated Talmud teacher there. Nonetheless, he wrote books on repentance, and he made a point of quoting Maimonides in every lecture he would give. In 1236, Rabbi Yonah died of sudden death caused by a rare disease.
Yeah, so people said, punishment maybe, right? Ooh, spooky. But the thing is, he lived in Montpellier, and then he moved. Montpellier is not so far from the coast. He could have just. Then he moved to Toledo, supposedly on his way to the Holy Land to go to Tiberias. But it's a different direction, the wrong direction. It's the way it went from the coast, and it's also the other way in terms of not going east but west. So I don't know how serious he was with this. Right, now the third wave of controversy.
Philosophy was in further decline, and the traditional study of the Bible and Talmud was on the rise, as well as the study of the Kabbalah. Anti-rationalists had the upper hand. A school of Tosophists in northern France and Germany banned the study of the Guide and the Book of Knowledge, the philosophical part of the Mishneh Torah.
Right. Yeah, so there's now again a ban on these studies. Yeah.
In 1288, one Tosophist by the name of Solomon Petit moved to Akko in Palestine to teach Kabbalah. Most of his students had been students of Maimonides before. While there, Solomon Petit continuously enticed people to burn Maimonides' books. However, as the Arabic Jews of Palestine were very comfortable with philosophy and science, his instigations led to nothing. Furthermore, living in Akko, Petit fell under the authority of Egypt, which happened to be led by Maimonides' grandson, David, the son of Abraham.
Yeah, he's not in the right place to do this kind of stuff. So Palestine was part of the Egyptian rule, right? And so the Nagid of Egypt was in charge of all the Jews in the whole kingdom, so to say, and the Sultanate. And so Akko is under the grandson of Maimonides. So I didn't think he could get away with this. This was a very short wave. Now it's a fourth wave.
Certain aspects of philosophy had gradually been accepted by many Jews, but traditionalists tried to limit its study as much as possible. Among traditionalists, the study of philosophy went through changes and was often studied in combination with Kabbalah and even magic.
Yeah, so how the philosophy became less rationalist, so to say. So more, certain aspects of philosophy have entered into Kabbalah, but it's a different type of philosophy. Yeah.
Debates between different parties focused on two important issues. Number one, far-reaching allegorical interpretations of the Torah, such as Abraham and Sarah would stand for matter and form. The 12 tribes of Israel would stand for the 12 signs of the zodiac. Rationalist groups were accused of replacing the Torah with Aristotle and being less observant.
Right. So those are examples, but these things are going around. And Judaism became, I guess, more multicolored, I mean, in a way, but not more tolerant in a way of different opinions. So this is far-reaching allegorical interpretations of the Torah. So the second point is healing through astral magic. So using astrology and stuff for therapies, so to say. Mm-hmm.
So that would be healing through the power of the sun, the moon, and the zodiac. The pro and anti parties were not neatly divided.
Yeah, what do people say about magic and about astrology, right? There's different groups.
Number one, firstly, there was a group of rationalists who taught that astrology was unscientific nonsense and that it was forbidden because it was not true.
Yeah, so if God is reason, then you have to follow, then serving God and is following the truth, no matter what the truth says. But if something is nonsense, then idol worship is basically the same as following nonsense. Like if you worship an idol, why is that forbidden? Not because God is jealous, because why would God be jealous with an idol that's nothing really? But it's because you have to walk in truth and not in lie. So that is what some rationalists would say. The same thing with astrology, because it is nonsense, it is forbidden. Mm-hmm.
Other rationalists believed that it was real and therefore allowed. Studying and using astrology and magic were like studying and applying science. Some even explained biblical texts and certain Jewish laws through applied astrology.
Yeah, that's also rationalist. If it's really a science, then when people found out about X-rays, right, they were doing they didn't really know all the implications, but they're doing all kind of experiments and what happened here, what happened there, and how long can you be exposed without getting cancer? Well, they found out too late, of course. But the same with magic, maybe. Well, if I do an incantation of the spirit, and maybe what's happening, and there were these kind of things. Yeah, but mostly I want to know magic, but mostly astrology. You have to figure out. If there's people who are born and the sun is here and the moon is there and this planet is there, what is that? How do you figure that out actually? But the idea was that it was kind of an unknown science. Mm-hmm.
Again, other rationalists taught that astrological and magic were not real, but that it had a therapeutic impact because of the psychological effect.
Yeah, so if it helps people to calm down, then that is something real in some way, and give them a talisman or something, a protective thing. You don't believe in it, but now he calms down. So okay, maybe that is therapeutically okay. Then fourth,
there were traditionalists who claimed that it was based on truth, that there were real dark powers at work, and that it was therefore forbidden.
Mm-hmm.
Other traditionalists claimed that it was based on truth, but that with the right Kabbalistic spells, these powers could nonetheless be used. Some traditionalists forbade it because it was a form of science and it would encourage the study of other scientists.
Yeah, so the traditionalists would say, yeah, it is a science, but science is forbidden. So that's why we cannot do it. So you see all these crazy people before and anti-astrology, maybe, that would still differ radically on the reason why. Yeah. Okay.
Rabbi Solomon ben Aderet, better known as Rashba, a Tosafist and a former student of Maimonides, wrote, I say that it was the kindness of the Supreme Being at the beginning of creation to create in his world things that would ensure the health of his creatures. If they happen to become ill or for otherwise lose their natural perfection, then these forces are there to restore them and to make them healthy. He placed these forces within nature, similar to medication and other tools known by the scholars of medicine. It is not impossible that such power also exists in speech, amulets, and in other things.
Yeah, so maybe these amulets are forces that God have created, and now we can use them. So this is definitely a traditionalist who thinks that these things can be used. That was a rather big group, actually. So interesting is that doesn't seem to drive with the text of the Torah so much. Uh-huh.
In 1305, the Rabbi Solomon ben Aderet issued a ban on all students under 25 to study philosophy and natural sciences, including mathematics and astronomy, with the only exception being medicine. He also advocated the burning of certain books.
Yeah, so radical. You know what? This is great reading, but I think I can give one other person a chance. Is that okay, Samantha?
Yeah, thanks.
You did a good job. Thanks. Is Marlene here?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Marlene. Very
Hi.
good. Okay, hold on. I'll go to the next slide.
Much of the controversy had gone on in Provence and
Languedoc, right.
Languedoc. This came to an end in 1306. The French kings of the north conquered Provence and made it part of France. In 1306, King Philip IV, the Beautiful, expelled all the Jews from France. Ironically, terminating the community where most of the clashes had taken place ended much of the Maimonidean controversy.
The clash is mostly in the south of France, because in the north of France, people were traditionalists mostly. They were like Tosophists, etc. In the heart of Spain, a lot of people were, and in the Arabic world, a lot of people were philosophers because they came from that world. And so in the middle, that is Provence, Languedoc, which is the south of France, but also in Catalonia. Okay, that's where these clashes. Both of these people were there. Now, when the French kings had conquered the south and made it part of France, and then in 1306 he expelled all the Jews from France. So the people were homeless, had to find somewhere else. They were dispersed, their community, their academies, their centers, they didn't exist anymore. So the controversy was gone there. There's only left some stuff going on in Catalonia, but most of it is gone. So it's interesting how a Jew hater ends a civil war in Jewish thought, right, basically. So let's now look what is going on now.
Still, the controversy never really ended. There is still no consensus about the question if philosophy and science can truly be combined with Jewish tradition. Some are very much in favor and many are opposed. Maimonides is unanimously accepted by all as perhaps the greatest scholar of Judaism, but most reinterpret Maimonides' teachings in a way that fits anti-rationalist thoughts and practice.
Yeah, so here these people go to Maimonides' grave. I think I've shown this picture before, or maybe another photo, and they pray at his grave. And so they obviously honor Maimonides. I think he's a very holy person, but they go against what he was really much against. That's another example.
Today, even groups that fervently revere Maimonides follow him in theory, but often turn his teachings around.
They study his Mishneh Torah constantly, and so they have a little celebration at the end. And what do you have this era? Hard liquor. So Maimonides said, no, only alcohol during the meal and just a little bit for digestion. But in order to celebrate his book, they serve hard liquor. So that's their culture, but it is not honoring Maimonides, so to say. Even though you study him, doesn't mean you follow him, right? Okay. Yeah.
Rabbi serve the community for a living.
Which is, of course, that it's hard to not do because it's a full-time job. Then you know, how do you need to have a living? But on the other hand, there's more and more communities that say we have all the knowledge. We have a lot of our people went to yeshivas. We have knowledge. We can find things online, and there's many communities who don't have a rabbi anymore. I don't know if that's ideal, but look, if you're a rabbi and you have like celebrity salaries, that would be a problem for Maimonides. I mean, yeah, okay. But in any case, even people who honor Maimonides might do this stuff. Yeah.
Many see it as their ideal to dedicate their entire lives to studying Talmud without ever learning a trade or making a living.
That's definitely what Maimonides is against. It's like he said, no, you have to make a living yourself, and then and support your family and yourself, and in your free time, then you study. And if you're dedicated, you can also study very smartly. But to spend your whole life studying the discussions in the Talmud, Maimonides had himself, he called that waste of time. So it's not really, this is not the Judaism that Maimonides was proposing. Not saying that people have to follow Maimonides, but it's interesting that everybody acknowledges Maimonides, but very few people follow him.
The morning blessings are said detached from the connected occasions. For instance, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who gives the rooster understanding to distinguish between day and night.
So yeah, the rooster in Hebrew in Aramaic is sichvi or sechvi, but then based on the grammar of Menachem ben Ibn Saruk, if you remember, the grammar idea that he had that that a word goes back to a root of 2 letters, then you can connect it to the word sechel, because it's also the first 2 letters, the sin and the kaf, the 2 letters on the right. And then you say, oh, rooster is connected to intellect, which is, and so intellect has these 2 letters. And so meaning, and they say, oh, you can say in the morning, even if you don't hear a rooster, that who gives our intuition, our heart, the understanding to distinguish between good and evil, which is nice. But Maimonides specifically says, no, this is about a rooster. And by the way, this is all based on grammar that was debunked. Debunked is the word, because there is that words go back to a 3-letter root, and this is a different root. It's not the same root, but this is based on an old grammatical insight. And so the last 2 lines.
Who gives the human heart the capacity to determine between day and night, between good and evil, to sense the light even when things seem dark?
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, it's a beautiful meaning, but it's not the original, the true meaning, and it's not Maimonides' teaching. Okay.
Maimonides taught in the Mishneh Torah, there is no commandment for which the blessing is recited after its fulfillment, except for the immersion of a convert. Anyone who eats bread must wash his hands before and after. Whenever a person washes his hands, whether before eating or before prayer, he should recite the following blessing beforehand. Footnote is the Ashkenazi custom is to recite the blessing after washing, but before drying one's hands.
Yeah, and many Sephardim do the same thing. But that is a Tosafist reasoning that maybe your hands are impure, and you cannot say the blessing yet with impure hands until you wash, and then you say it later. But that's an assumption. You say, when you say blessing over an apple, you also don't wash your hands first. So Maimonides says always before. So you light candles on Shabbat. You say the blessing before you light the candles. Those are okay. Yeah.
Even people who revere Maimonides may visit the graves of holy men and ask the deceased for mediation against Maimonides' teaching.
Right. Okay.
They liberally drink alcohol and dance in synagogues. This is also against Maimonides' teaching.
Yeah, you're not supposed to dance in synagogues, and you're not to drink liquor and even eat or drink in synagogues. But drinking liquor this way is not allowed, according to Maimonides.
People may get drunk, especially on Purim, against Maimonides' teaching. The study of secular sciences is discouraged.
Yeah, discouraged. So even though there are, of course, laws that you have to teach people secular studies, they do as minimum as possible and get away with it, because everything has to go towards Gemara. Yeah. Almost the last slide.
If someone brings up Maimonides' philosophical teachings, the answer is often, Maimonides never meant what he wrote in the Guide of the Perplexed. He just tried to bring people back to Judaism who are in danger of being absorbed by philosophy.
Yeah, so they don't take Maimonides' words seriously, like, oh, he just wrote that to bring people back to Judaism, but he didn't believe himself. You hear that really a lot. And so, in other words, exactly what Samantha already observed, it is honoring and acknowledging Maimonides while going against his teachings, basically. And that's the pattern. And this is my last slide. We do stick it up. Okay. Wow, the time is perfect. It's 1 minute before the end. How perfect did I plan these 2 classes? I'm so proud. So it has been worse. Okay, very cool. Thank you so much. I hope you all enjoyed the class. If there's, and then next class, I'm going to talk about Kabbalah. So I think a lot of people are interested in what that is. And this ends our class.